quite honestly, I wish this never would have happened. I mean, honest to God, I wish this never would have happened because it just, the whole thing is sickening. But it did, and what he did is what he did. Would it have been, you know, better to bring something out? Of course. But I don't think at that point in time he was worried about or even thinking about proving Bigfoot exists. I think he was trying to get out of there to escape being in some whatever kind of trouble that they could possibly be in, or you follow me?
Yeah. Right.
I think they just wanted away from the place. You know.
Hey, Derek.
Again, until you're in that situation, you don't know what you're going to do. It was a while before I was 100% convinced. I mean, I wasn't going to drop what I was doing and go to Northern California on the story that somebody just shot 2 Sasquatches. You know, it took some time for me to be convinced, and so that's why the next best thing was to just try to convince him to go back up there. But I'm not a rich guy. I can't just drop and run every time, you know, somebody claims that they've got something. Then, on top of that, I had to process it, and I had to figure out if I was even going to be involved, you know, because the Olympic Project and the people that I work with, we're very serious people, but we also have gobs of respect for this species. You know, we're in love with this species. We love doing the research. We love tracking. We love looking for them. We have mountains of respect. And if you've tracked these things for years and you've been around them, you respect them more because of their intelligence level. I mean, trying to follow one of these things through the woods is a very tall order. And their intelligence is over the top. And so it took me. The whole thing wasn't easy. I mean, it made my skin crawl in the beginning. It still makes my skin crawl, you know, and it was a very tough decision to get involved or to not get involved. And believe me, the flack I've taken over, it's a lot. The same thing I say is what would anybody else would have done in the same situation. I mean, it was a very tough call.
Is it true that bone was found along with some hair during the recovery in July?
Yes. It was a bone fragment. It looked to me, I don't know, but it looked to me like it could have been like the tip of a rib or something like that. I'm not saying that's what it was, but it was a bone fragment. It was very small, and it did have some hair on it that was the same color as the other hair. And it was found in the same spot that the flesh sample was found.
Okay. Did the piece that you saw on the trip, did it have hair?
It looked exactly like the piece that was the picture that I had seen on the email. Just a little piece of it, and exactly what was described to me, and it matched the pictures that I have. The sample is grayish, and it's got some black in it as well. The juveniles were all dark brown to black. Okay. The 2 juveniles, and they were both the same color. The adult was gray with black in it. When the bag was brought over, and John took the bag first, opened the bag and sniffed it, and he got a big grin on his face. And he goes, "Wow, that smells really familiar." And you know, there was some excitement there for a minute. And John recognized that smell. And I got to tell you, this flesh sample smells. It's different than anything I've ever smelled in my life.
Really?
It's really a strange smell. Yeah, it has a very distinct smell. And you know, I've smelled coyotes. I've field dressed coyotes, and it didn't smell like any coyote I've ever smelled or anything else that I've ever smelled for that matter. It was a very weird smell. And it just kind of the smell just kind of stays with you, and it's hard to describe, but it's very odd.
Tell me this: the bone, did it look like it had been broken by teeth?
You know, it just looked like a shard. It looked like it could have been from a bullet impact, or it looked like it could have been the leftover chewings of a porcupine. You know, it's hard to tell. It was a sharp little piece of bone, almost like a big chip, but it did have some hair on it as well.
Right.
A little bit of flesh and some hair.
When you were at the site with all these guys, what was it like? Just tell me what the scene was like there.
Well, it's a gorgeous place. I mean, it's beautiful, and it was kind of for me. I'd always wanted to go there. You know, I'd driven through there, but I never got to do any hiking. I'm an avid hiker, and I've always wanted to hike that area, related or unrelated to Bigfoot. You know, it's just a gorgeous place. It's near the top of a mountain. It's fairly flat where it happened, and there are some river drainages that fall away from it, and 4 to be exact. And I searched almost every inch of every one. I mean, we put in, I can't even tell you how many miles were hiked. Some of the things that you like when we got to the spot there. There was a marshy kind of a riverbed area where they had tucked the little one under some brush. And I got thinking, okay, well, if there had been a big rain or something like that, or see, what I was thinking is possibly when they went back that they had misplaced where they put the small one because of all the snow, and there was a lot of snow there. And they concentrated most of their snow digging where they thought they heard the big one fall. After they took kind of a quick look to see if the little one was there, they didn't think it was there. So they concentrated on digging in the snow where they thought they heard the big one fall. Right. And where the little one was put was a bit of a riverbed. And it was kind of put on the upper shore of the riverbed, but it was under a whole bunch of buckbrush. So basically, when we got there, we did not have confirmation that the dogs were coming, that the dog was coming, and that's another thing a lot of people are talking about is, you know, and even Jeff had mentioned it, but the fact of the matter is Jeff had cadaver dogs lined up to come, and that fell through. So his plan B was to get a local lady there in the Sierras that had a cadaver dog, and that plan actually worked, but we didn't know until she showed up. And we were there for a day and a half, almost 2 days before Jeff got there. So we were not going to just sit and wait. So we started crawling, and Paul Graves showed up, and we hit it hard, and Bart Catino and Bobo and so other members of the Olympic Project, and we just started doing a grid search. And the first thing I did was think that, okay, well, if a large thaw or a heavy rain hit the area, it could very well rise up above the upper shore where they put the little one, and it could have washed it downstream. So the very first thing I did was I worked that whole wetland right there, and then I walked that stream all the way down the mountain until it finally came to a dirt road, and searched every inch of it, and then came back up, and we hit the wetlands again with several people, and then we just started doing a grid search. And then a lot of times when an animal expires, it goes to a very dark, deep place, normally a river bottom or a valley floor. Right? If you ever are in the woods and you find a ravine and you find that little creek that's in the bottom of the ravine, even if it's a dry creek, if you get on your hands and knees and you work those little ravines, you can find all kinds of bones. Animals go to dark places like that, especially the ravine bottoms, to expire. If they know they're dying or if they're wounded, they'll go down to a place like that. So that was my main focus for about 4 days, was working the ravines that were in the area, and there was about 4 different ravines.
Okay. When I'm just trying to put myself in this place at the time, did you think that another animal
was a gorgeous place?
Okay. Did it look like a place where a natural place for animals to walk through? A natural path or whatever from one place to another?
Well, there are game trails all over the place.
Okay.
And this place in October, see, it's a funny area because when we were there, the animal was almost devoid, or the area was almost devoid of animals because the thaw had just happened. And later on in the season, coming towards October, the bears move up, and everything moves back up. The forage is really good. There's a lot of food up there. And so I would say that between the end of August, September, October, November, that area is going to be full of animals, just full of animals. And then when the snows hit in November, they'll work back down mountain because that's up at over 7,000 feet. But yeah, it's an animal-rich place, and there was even a lot of bear tracks up there when we were up there.
Well, that's the next question. If you, it sounds like a bear or coyotes or something got to the adult. And first of all, before I ask you this question, was the adult a male or female?
I can't tell you.
Okay.
That's under NDA.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I believe me, I don't like that any more than you do. I mean, I can't stand this.
Okay, well,
that's something I can't speak to.
Right. If it bears or coyotes or any predator out there would start, say got to the adult and apparently tore it apart, they probably did the same. I mean, they probably got to the same time with the babies, right? They would probably have sniffed out the baby or the juvenile. And I'm just wondering, do you know how animals would they take a body away with them if they could? Would they pick it up and travel with it, or would they just eat it there? How would predators work a kill like that?
Well, here's my take on what I think very possibly could have happened. Okay. I think that the large one was probably, there's a lot of cats up there too, a lot of cougars and bears. And I think that it's a good possibility that the large one, see, when you get a bear, a cougar, especially a cat, will come into a kill, the first thing it does is it will rip into the gut cavity, and it'll go and get the protein-rich organs, like the liver, and that's the first thing that they do. And so I think that there's a possibility, a pretty good possibility, that a cat got there, or two cats, and they probably ripped into the large one to get the organs, and I think that's probably how the flesh came to be. The little one could have easily been carried away by a cat or a bear, easily, because it wasn't very big. And so I think that one might have been carried away by a predator. But then the other, theory that I have is that the big one, was torn apart to get to the organs, but I think there's a very good chance that their own kind came and found them and took them. And, it's a stretch, but that's kind of what I think. That's what I'm leaning towards.
Right.
The little one could have been carried off by a predator easily. The big one, no, not so much. In the time between Justin, when it happened and when Justin got back up there, if it was still there, they would have found it. So I think it was probably, taken away. And again, I know that's a stretch, and it's just a theory, but that's what I think.
Okay. If it was taken away, say by a cat or by another animal, is there any distance that they might travel before they would consume it, or would they take it to their den, or would they?
Well, cats will sometimes, if a cat's got a good meal, it'll take it to a safe place to where it's got good visibility, and it's usually up a little, on a little bit of a vantage point, and then a cat will bury it. A cat will bury a majority of it, and sometimes a bear will too. And so, that was one of the things. And actually, when I was in that little river basin, within about 40 yards of where they thought they had laid the little one, I found a mound. And I was excited, so I started digging with my hands, literally, and I excavated this area where this mound was, and there was nothing in there. But, the predators will bury their kill sometimes. The little one could have been, it's just impossible to guess what happened, and what happened to the bodies.
I know.
And nothing does last very long in the forest at all.
Yeah, apparently that's true. Your Meldrum was right about that. That bones do not last in the forest very long. They really do get consumed and spread about. The large was when Justin and you all went back up there. Was he able to see where he actually found the piece of meat? Was he able to see that spot without snow?
Oh yeah. And there was an old rotten stump right there, and the flesh sample was found right next to the stump, and the part of the stump had been broken off, almost like something had fallen into it. And they thought that that's what they had heard this thing fall into.
Right. And how far away was that from where he had shot it?
I would say 150 yards.
Wow.
Roughly.
That is a long way.
Yeah. It's not, maybe 100 yards, maybe, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So you guys really had, he really had to, it's amazing he found it at all when you think about it.
Right.
That's a lot of space to be covering to look for something.
Well, when they heard it, I've actually, when I've taken a deer or whatever, or an elk, and it's fallen, a lot of times if it's quiet out and you hear it fall, you can almost pinpoint exactly where it fell.
Oh, okay.
And that's kind of what they did. Not only that, but as they were looking for the big one and the little ones were around them, they were hanging right in this area.
Oh,
they kept popping back out of the brush right where they thought they'd heard the big one fall. And that would only make sense if they were staying with the adult.
Right.
Or close to the adult. And and it was kind of taken on the way his dog reacted to where they made him finally dig in this one spot next to the stump that had been kind of a little bit exploded, and that's where.
And how did the dog react?
Oh, it was just acting funny. It would go in places, and then there was a couple places it was avoiding, and they'd put it back in the spot, and it would avoid the spot, and they just kind of kept keying on that, and then they saw the stump that had been broken apart pretty hard, and they put two and two together, and then in relation also to where the little ones were, and that's how they found it.
Yeah.
But they dug all day. All day. Dug and looked and dug and looked.
That's amazing. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and it's just amazing that there was nothing left. I except for that little bit of bone you found. You know, I mean.
Well, that's why I think that there's a good possibility that the body was taken away by their own kind.
Right.
That wouldn't surprise me in the least. And it probably happened, you know, the predators could have gotten to it that night, the next day.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to say. And remember, one of the little ones, the surviving little one, you know, very well could have led their own kind back to the spot. You know, it's just guesswork, you know, Chuck. I'm not trying to make this fantasy story come to life here, but, you know, I've racked my brain over the same questions that you have. It's a strange deal.
When you talked to him, did the other little one run away before they left the area? I mean,
after he shot the little one, the other one just disappeared.
Disappeared. Okay.
Yep, it was gone.
Eric, I had a couple of questions. Do you think, since there was at least one surviving Bigfoot in that situation, and knowing Bigfoot as well as I do and how keen their sense of smell is, do you think Smedja needs to watch his back in the woods? Because, you know, they're pretty keen, and I was wondering if you think they might try to extract some vengeance on him one day.
Wow, you know, that's a heck of a thought. You know, and quite honestly, when we were up there camping, you know, it was, I think it might have been in everybody's mind a little bit. He does feel very bad about this whole ordeal, and he is going to take some steps here in the very near future for advocacy and trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. And through the Olympic Project, we're actually in the process of putting together a brochure. Don't know how well it's going to be received, but that can be given out, hopefully in some states with hunting licenses, you know, depending on how this study is received, to where what not to do and what things that you could encounter while hunting. He has taken some proper steps along those lines, and he's willing to do just about anything. He's willing to go talk to gun clubs. He's willing to do anything to help the situation. And given if this all happened to him again, he would not do it. I mean, there's no way.
Derek, I have a question from Nancy in the chat room. She wants to know, from the hair sample they have, is it being compared to other researcher hair samples that they have from Sasquatch?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I figured.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's one other thing I'd like to touch on real quick. This story, it's gotten so much attention because, you know, of what it is, and people think he's lying and this, that, and the other thing. But the sad thing to me is, one of the sad, I mean, there's many sad things to me here, but there's a lot of samples in this study. This is one. You know, we've turned in over 100 to this study, just the Olympic Project alone. And there's a lot of researchers that have put a lot of samples out there, and I just wish I wish the story wouldn't have broken till it was done. You know, it's been a nightmare.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
It's been an absolute nightmare trying to keep up with it, and you know, it's just crazy.
When Justin was wasn't he actually holding the juvenile?
Yes.
Did he notice the color of the eyes of the juvenile?
Best of memory, I think he said that they were dark, but
was there any white?
Had a human look to them. To me, honest, Chuck, I don't remember whether he said there was white or not.
Sasquatch actually licked your trail cam, and that you've actually gotten DNA from that. Is that true?
That is correct. Basically, how it happened is Richard Germeau, who's my partner, we were up checking this camera, and it's in a very remote spot, over 4,000 feet, and we'd got up to the camera, and the camera had been moved, manipulated. Yeah, it was moved, and it was gooped. It was gooped up like it had been spit on or licked on or something like that. And the good thing about Rich is trained in gathering DNA and forensic gathering in field. It's what, you know, he's a sheriff. And we carry those kits with us in our backpacks. And so he DNA swabbed the entire camera very thoroughly, and we videoed that as well. And then, yeah, that sample was sent in. and it's part of the study. But I do have big hopes for the study. Melba's put in her time. She's worked incredibly hard. She's been very diligent, and she's put up with a lot of crap, and she's still in it. And
That's right.
I have a lot of admiration and respect for that woman. I'll tell you that right now.